Okay, great. So we are live on YouTube. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm calling this meeting to order, and just very quickly, I move to adopt the minutes from our September 28th meeting as submitted to the group beforehand. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we're going to try to keep tonight's meeting to an hour. So I will dive right in. And first item, I just wanted to thank John for giving our quarterly presentation to the town board yesterday. Thank you so much. And just hear from you if you had any updates from that or questions or insights that you wanted to share.
Actually, there were no questions. So it went pretty routinely.
Good.
And I followed Chris Burdick, so he went for quite a while explaining all the money that Lewisboro's getting. So
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Let's see, the next one won't be till January, so we don't have to worry about that yet. So also, just a quick note, Charlene had a last minute work situation that she needed to deal with, so she won't be joining us. And I know Jane had a conflict tonight as well. So we are all here. Moving right on, the next agenda item is update on our survey. So Larry, I'll pass that to you. I figure we can kind of do our routine check-in on it and how it's functioning, and then we can discuss how long we want to keep it open for.
Okay, sure. Well, a quick update is as of just a few minutes ago, we had 583 responses directly to the website. And then we have at least a couple of dozen written responses that have come in as well, which should put the total at over 600 responses, which you might remember was our goal. So we hit the goal. We had a lot of surveys that came in originally when we started in June. Those responses kind of trailed off in July. August, we got a lot of responses in. And then September, they started to trail off. In October, we've only been getting a couple of responses. Well, we got just one response this week, a couple of responses last week. And it's been that way for the last few weeks, where they've kind of started to trail off. Mm-hmm. I know that this is something that the group hasn't decided upon yet, but I think we should consider an end date for the survey and get to the next step, which would be to kind of try to analyze some of the results. Mm-hmm. The only other thing I guess I could report on is, it was designed to be a fairly quick survey with mostly multiple choice questions and with some open-ended questions. The multiple choice questions are pretty easy, I think, to analyze, but it will be a lot more work, I think, to really dig into the open-ended questions. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be interesting for all of us and for the board and the public to start to see some of those responses. And I think that's going to take some time to kind of tally those and analyze them and divide them up into categories. And now I'm talking about the open-ended questions. Mm-hmm. On average, I think it was 6 minutes and 37 seconds was the average amount of time that mostly residents took to answer the questions in the survey. So it's it's a relatively brief and quick survey that somebody could take, again, by paper or on their smartphone or logged in on a laptop. And again, there are links to that survey from the steering committee homepage on the town website. So beyond that, I don't really have much else to add.
There was actually one question from the town board, and that was, how long are we going to keep the survey open? So mm-hmm. I basically said, we hadn't decided, but we were keeping it open for now. Mm-hmm. I would suggest maybe we keep it open until the RFP is answered.
Mm-hmm. I would add that there's one avenue of advertising that we haven't done yet. A free advertising, I should say. We've never had the town clerk's office or whoever manages the general town email list. We've never had them send out a standalone email that says, you know, in the subject line, share your vision for Lewisboro. Here's the link to the survey. There was an email that went out like that for the communication infrastructure survey. So that's one way we could get the word out one more time and announce a deadline. But before we do that, I do want to check on the post office status, because if we are going to announce that there's a deadline, I want to make sure that we're equipped to get any of those last paper surveys that might trickle in. The other thing is that email could go out from the town. I can also send out another round of emails to civic groups. There's a list of civic groups on the town website that I copied and pasted the email addresses that were listed there. And back in like July, we sent out, you know, here's the link to the survey. Please share this with everybody that, you know, you have contact information for, just sort of like a plea to get the word out. So we could do that one more time as well. But I do expect the word might travel to people who would want to do paper copies. So before we move to the post office, any other thoughts about deadline or survey endpoint?
I had a question about the QR code, and can we reuse it for subsequent surveys?
If we have a new survey, we can generate a new QR code for a new survey. So we wouldn't, yeah, so we wouldn't reuse it.
Okay.
Mark,
Well,
did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Me? No.
Yes, not to put you on the spot. It just looked like you wanted to say something. Okay, go ahead, Larry.
I have not been able to check the Wacabuck or South Salem post offices in the last week.
But before that, they were okay?
That there were still some paper surveys there, and I've just collected one response maybe since our last meeting.
Okay.
So.
How's Golden Bridge post office, Mark?
Well, you know, Kirsten has kept me well stocked with, you know, fresh packets, and I was there last week. I don't have any return. I don't have any responses to bring back. And the postmaster, or the gentleman who's at the front desk there, said that people have seen them and some people have taken them. But I said, but there's nothing, I don't know what's happening to them. Yeah, so that I was there last week and there was nothing to bring back, but I did prop up a fresh envelope, and it has you know, a collection of surveys in there. So
okay, but the envelopes,
I don't know where they're going.
the envelopes didn't go missing though? Those were still there?
No, the envelopes aren't. Oh, well, they're not missing. No, the envelopes
Okay.
aren't missing. Yeah.
Well, that's something. That's good, at least. Yeah, that's a good first step. I didn't get a chance to ask Charlene about Cross River. I will follow up with her tomorrow. Vista, John?
Yeah, I noticed when I got back from the Outer Banks that the envelopes were empty, so I got some more surveys from Kirsten, and I think they're all still there.
Okay.
Like I think like Larry said, that some of them people take them. I don't know what they do with them.
Right.
But anyway, as of I think a day or two ago, Vista was stocked. So
Okay.
the envelopes, putting the blue tape on the envelopes kept them in place.
So you might recall on the bottom of the paper surveys, it does have instructions that they could be returned to where they pick them up or to the planning office. And I think she's probably been getting the most of the paper ones returned, and she's been forwarding them to me to be entered.
Right, either by hand or US mail. They have been trickling in. I've checked the library, townhouse, no responses there.
Okay, but as long as everywhere is fully stocked and folks have the opportunity to go and to pick one up and to send it in, that's, that's all we can do. So I'm glad to hear that everything is still functional as of now. So John mentioned in terms of deadline, at least until the survey is, until the RFP is due back. I think that's a good, since we have November 15th already on the books as a deadline, because once we get the RFP responses back, then we're going to need to have a period of time where we can all read them. The chair of the planning board, the architectural review board, the zoning board of appeals, they're going to need to read them as well. During our next meeting, we'll go over the due diligence questionnaire that we'll all be answering. So there will be a period of time where we are reading and doing research behind the scenes and not necessarily meeting to discuss them yet. So the survey analysis could potentially go hand in hand then. I don't know, Larry, get your thoughts.
I think it would be, well, I'm actually surprised that none of the planning firms that we sent the RFP out to has requested it, because I think we mentioned that there was a survey that was being conducted. I would have expected some of the planning firms in their response that they would have wanted to look at the survey responses to see, if that can give them some guidance on how to respond. But I think the steering committee and probably the town board and other town committees may be able to use those responses, kind of the survey responses and the analysis of the survey responses to help them when they're considering, the RFP responses and which firm might be most appropriate, based on what the firms may or may not be recommending. So I think those survey responses, that we should have them completed and to have some sort of tabulation and analysis for when we are reviewing when we're reviewing the RFPs that have been submitted.
Mm-hmm.
If they're anything like the consultants I've worked with, their probably attitude is we didn't design the survey, so it's not that important.
Right. I think it will help us as we evaluate the candidates if we have sort of some high-level takeaways from the survey results in mind of which topics are most important to the town. Since we do have a good representative sample, if the town says that, I know one of the options we had was check here if you think sustainability is important to be included in the plan. If we know that that is really important to the majority of residents, then we obviously want a consultant who feels that to be the case as well, or who has expertise in that area. So, I agree with you, Larry, that kind of insight would be helpful. I'm just looking at the calendar. So we have 3 weeks until November 15th. So maybe to give folks to get an email out, get another series of email outs and get any last minute responses. We could try to get that email out this week or early next week, and then ask for maybe like Wednesday the 10th, or I just threw that out there but like the end of the week of the 10th, 11th, 12th. That way we have the weekend before the 15th before any RFP responses come in. We could always extend the deadline if we only get 2 responses to the RFP, for example. We might need to extend the RFP deadline itself, so then we could extend the survey deadline as well.
Yeah, I think once you get to Thanksgiving, people
right
are busy with, both at home with Christmas and Hanukkah and all that, and in business, everybody's trying to make their numbers. So I think after that, people aren't going to focus on this.
Yeah. What does everybody think about, or should we say a Friday? Is that better? Friday the 12th as the deadline for the survey?
Sure.
I think people are really bombarded right now with the election.
Yeah.
At least that's on my mind. And so after the second, I mean, people are just getting so much lit from
Right.
candidates.
Yep.
And
A lot of phone calls.
so I just think that the world, in fact, personally for me, my time really opens up beginning November 2nd.
So
And
how
I did.
about we say, if we send out the email to everybody, like then maybe the end of next week, like the 4th or the 5th, wait to communicate, wait to send the email communication and then have the deadline be the following Friday. Would that sound good? But I agree, maybe wait to communicate about it until after next week.
Yeah, that's probably good. I mean, if they haven't done it like shortly after they get it, they're not going to respond. They're going to they'll either delete it or do something about it.
Yeah, maybe we could just reach a few people that haven't heard about it yet somehow. Okay, how does everybody feel about that? Send email out late next week. Survey deadline the 12th.
Right.
I see Larry nodding.
Yeah, that sounds
John,
good.
you're good. Mark, does that sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, great. So then let's do that. And fingers crossed it generates, a little bit more of a flurry perhaps. And we can, get a few more responses. That would be great. And Larry, I don't want you to have to analyze everything all by yourself when the responses come in. So I know we have the team Survey Monkey. I'd be happy to, I'm not sure how the mechanics work, but I'd be happy to interface on that and help like clean up the word clouds and do whatever like behind the scenes data cleanup needs to happen to make it digestible.
I assume that for on the other than the writing questions, we just get graphs and such of the responses.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be super user friendly. Fingers crossed, but it's set up to be user friendly for sure. Okay.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if we can look at the data by Hamlet or any. I don't know if that's a capability or not.
Yeah, so one of the questions, John, is we asked people to identify which hamlet they're located in, and you could look at each response based on how they answered other questions in the survey. So we can do that. And
can you split the results by the answer of a particular question, or is that?
Yes, I believe you can. So we could see how like respondents like in the South Salem hamlet answered the survey or survey questions versus somebody from the Vista hamlet. So I think we could really dig down into that as far as we like. There are some good tools. I haven't like tried out the like word cloud, and that's what Katie was referring to for the open-ended questions. Those are going to be the questions that I think will be more difficult to analyze, but it looks like I think it was 87% of the respondents did answer the open-ended questions. So we have hundreds of responses to look through, and I just did a little sampling, just glancing through them, and some of them are 2 or 3 words or a sentence, and others are are really thoughtful responses. So that's why I think we need to have some time to be able to dig in and review them and summarize them, or maybe put them into categories. There is this word cloud feature that Katie's referring to that SurveyMonkey provides as a tool. But we also have all the raw data that we could dump into an Excel spreadsheet where we could kind of, maybe there's other ways that we want to look at them, the open-ended questions, by breaking them down into different categories, for instance.
And we will still be able to handle the raw data over to the consultant as well. And whether or not they liked the way that we answered the questions, that definitely gives them a lot to work with once they're hired. So, you know, I think it'll be really good. Thank you so much for leading the charge on the survey, Larry. And I know we all really appreciate the work that you've put into it on an ongoing basis.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts about the survey before we move on to the next topic?
Well, everybody, I just want to say, everybody seems to know about the survey. It's kind of interesting. So I've been doing separately a lot of door knocking, like several hundred doors. Actually, I think I door knocked Larry and you, Kate, and dropped off some lit. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, the survey, yeah. Oh yeah." They talk about it. And so anecdotally, responses are, I say, what do you think? Do you have some comments? And so a lot of people talk about the survey. It's not clear they've really taken it, but they're aware of it. Can you reduce my taxes, cell phone service, and roads? So this is, anecdotal. This is just verbal. The door knocking. Those are the three most prevalent comments: taxes, cell service, and roads.
Gotcha.
And Larry was you probably addressed this in the last meeting, but Larry had a great booth at the town library fair, and he could probably, tell you how that went as well. But
yes, we did cover that in our last meeting.
Okay.
I think we've done a great job of getting the word out. So kudos to everybody, and thank you to the town board again for funding the postcard mailer, because that certainly got the word out in an equal way to every single address in the town. So yeah, great. And the flyers and the post office, I mean, everybody's worked really hard to get the word out. So all of that is very much appreciated. Okay, so moving on to the topic of the RFP to consultants. So I am pleased to report that Kirsten did get questions from two planning firms. One you can see on the screen, BFJ Consulting, and the other was Nelson Pope Voorhees. So what I would like to do is I have a Google document that I am going to share. What we promised we would do in the RFP is post responses to any and all questions to the Lewisboro RFP website. So this Google document will be, I'll share with the webmaster the link, and it'll be available on the website, and we can update it in real time as we get, when we get more questions. Just take a peek right now. I doubt it's helpful for me to read it out loud. I'll just let, the first question I think is pretty straightforward. And Charlene was able to respond to this one to me and Kirsten behind the scenes back over email. So I took a stab at a draft response. Yes, our intention is to have the implementation plan be worked into the comprehensive plan. And that extra sentence just about our mission, that we want to make actionable recommendations that actually provide a framework for implementation. If anybody has any, just raise your hand / shout out if you have anything you want me to add to the response. Moving on to the next one, definitely need help with this one. Our RFP mentions urban design as a criteria for consultant selection. And the way it does that is it's really super general. We just say in the selection criteria, we say, please list your experience in the following areas, and provide examples of your experience in the following areas, and urban design is one of them. So I wanted to point out that, we're using urban design as a general umbrella term. Obviously, we don't have a quote unquote urban center in Lewisboro, but what we're saying is that the practice of urban design encompasses planning for the future in terms of land use, mobility, housing, economic development. If that sounds good to everybody. But then the second question, how do you envision urban design being worked into the overall scope of the comprehensive plan? Would love to hear your thoughts about how I could finish that sentence with regards to the overall
Katie,
scope.
I'm happy to jump in here. I mean, the traditional or historic urban design is kind of a grid of streets that repeats itself like throughout human history, because it seems to be, I don't know, I guess the most efficient way for people to live and interact together. And Lewisboro does not really have a traditional street grid pattern anywhere, or not to any significant extent. There, like, maybe there is an opportunity to do something, a more historical urban pattern in parts of Lewisboro. I don't want to put forward like a specific vision, but there are areas where that might be appropriate, perhaps in like Golden's Bridge or near the train station, or there may be some place somewhere in town where it may be appropriate, or where residents would prefer to have some sort of a more active like urban grid pattern. But I personally think that's something that would be developed bottom up from the residents and not from the steering committee. I know we each may have our own particular views. I know I do, but I think that that's something that we would want to explore as part of the process.
Yeah,
is my opinion.
I think you may also want to put something in about improving the vibrance of the hamlets or something along those lines.
I'm just writing roughly here, but during the community engagement phase of the project, in terms of hamlet revitalization.
And I don't know if you want to try to get something in there about community centers or something like that, the kind of thing they're proposing for Golden's Bridge as an example.
Community centers, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have anything we should add? And Dan, I know you probably have some thoughts, but we can circle back to you during your section of the agenda. Yeah, I think that's good. That's all we need to say really is, we were thinking about it sort of broadly. We need the consultant we don't have a specific vision that we want to enact. We need the consultant to pull that out of the meetings with the town residents. All right, well, that's good. I can clean that up.
So I guess I just have a question for Larry, I just don't even see how the word urban would ever pop up in any of our hamlets or our town. So is that a term of art in another context? Or because I just don't think we are urban.
Well, I did look it up on the American Planning Association website before the meeting. And it doesn't necessarily, it's a broad term. It doesn't necessarily only apply to cities. It can apply to more suburban or rural communities. It's just sort of the practice of looking at urban principles with regard to land use, mobility, housing, and economic development. So it's already in the RFP. We can't take it back. Okay, so the RFP references 1999 Comprehensive Master Plan update. Was it ever adopted? So I know we've talked about this a little bit back and forth. When Kirsten kicked this question over to Janet Donahue in the town clerks at the town clerk, and also Janet Anderson, just because she, as the chair of the planning board, has that institutional knowledge. We came up with this response collectively. I know we've looked at, what the 1999 which of the 1999 recommendations have been enacted, but not in a, formal way. So the short answer is it was never formally implemented or adopted, but it certainly has provided guidance for stuff that has happened in town. Anything else anyone wants to add to that question?
No, I think that's accurate.
Okay, yeah, you've got the institutional memory. Okay, this question, kind of interesting. What's the allocated budget? This consultant wanted to know. So this is what I wrote. Edits welcome. Charlene chimed in over email that, when we were writing the grant, we kind of had Jan Johansson gave us sort of a range that maybe it would cost between 100 and 140. These are very rough estimates. So I think this is important to tell the consultants, we did mention this in the RFP, we want to see sort of like a menu. We don't want people just to come back and say, it will cost X dollars. We want them to say, this phase will cost this much, this phase will cost this much. That way we can kind of compare and contrast better and prioritize. And I did want to mention the numbers in terms of what we had applied for the grant, just because I think that's helpful. Any things to add to this question? Does this look okay?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, and this will be a working document. So it is in steering drive under RFP. It's just living in this general area. So, if you have comments or additions, you can pop in there and change them. I'll have a PDF posted to the website that we can always update. The link will be live, so we can just repost the PDF on an ongoing basis.
Katie, a question or clarification. So the idea of this document is that this would be made available to all of the potential respondents. Is that
Public.
Right?
It'll be public because there'll be a link to it on our website.
Okay,
Just
great.
like the idea that if one person gets an answer to something, everybody should get an answer.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so I'll clean up that urban, and I just noticed the chat. So that is actually interesting. Kirsten pointed out that in the 1985 plan, there was one area of town that was classified as quote unquote urban. So it's actually, my saying that urban, the word urban doesn't apply to Lewisboro was actually factually incorrect. So that makes me feel a little better that we didn't put the word urban design in the RFP and it's completely irrelevant. So enough people looked at the RFP that if it was wrong, it probably would have been taken out. Okay, let me bring our agenda back up. Okay, so Kirsten, I will put that on my list to finalize that document and get it over to the webmaster. Other next steps, we will review the due diligence questionnaire at our next meeting. I'm going to put work into that and hopefully send it around beforehand. And we'll discuss at our next meeting the process for, how much time we're going to have to review the RFPs, what we're going to do to get together and discuss them or submit the scoring grids and all that good stuff. So that is for another day. And okay, next topic. Any other quick questions about the RFP before I move on? Okay. Next topic, and this is just a placeholder. I know we're not looking at applying until early 2022, but just in case you had anything you needed from the group to help you, Mark, on the Hudson Valley Greenway Community Grant.
Yeah, so just to keep in mind, and I talked to Larry, he offered to help with this, and I did reach out to Tony, who's also offered to help. A couple things that we're that'll help. Well, if we have a contractor with a price and a scope of services and a budget for services, that's going to help, as opposed to a prospective. So once we land on a vendor, that will help support the grant. And then we're going to have a timetable for implementation. They're very interested in seeing that not only, okay, the 10,000 you're asking for is going towards a contracted amount, not a prospective amount, but also what is your implementation schedule look like for the final product? Because they don't want to just be funding studies that aren't adopted or actionable. So I just wanted to sort of keep that in mind as part of a little essay for us to prepare.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds really good. Okay, public education sessions. So last meeting, September 28th, we did publicize the first hour of the meeting was a public education session. I know that the committee really enjoyed the presentation and found it very educational for us. There were 2 viewers from the public. We weren't able to keep that video up on YouTube after the fact because of copyright issues, because that video is owned by the New York Planning Federation. So typically we do get views of our meetings that happen after the fact. So maybe our numbers would have gone up. But in terms of having a live one-time only public education session, I think it's safe to say that that's not something that we can keep doing and expecting. I mean, maybe we'd get a few more, but I don't think we can keep doing that. So my suggestion is have guest speakers or have sessions during our regularly scheduled meetings that we're interested in and will benefit our learning, and then will be available as recordings after the fact. So a great example of that, I'll have to follow up with Charlene on when Norma is available, but I know Charlene was trying to get her to come talk to us in November about the 2020 census data for Lewisboro. So that we can totally publicize and say, public education session, Lewisboro and the 2020 census, join us on this day. But we can also have it be available as a recording so people can watch it whenever it's convenient for them. So I think that's a really good next public education session that we can target for November. And then we can kind of go from there and see what other topics or guest speakers are useful in maybe not December because of holidays, but maybe in January. Those are my thoughts, but would love to hear if anybody has anything else they'd like to throw out there.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I will follow up with Charlene on dates for census data.
On the topic of just engagement, and while we've got Dan Welsh online, Dan had an idea about reaching out to an organization in Brainerd, Minnesota, which I did, Strong Towns. And Strong Towns is a nonprofit that is focused on engagement in the planning process. And I don't know if Dan wanted to weigh in on, kind of what the genesis was on this. But
Not yet. It's not his turn yet. Did you finish your thought, Mark? Did
yeah,
you?
I just want to, mention that along the theme of presentations and engagement, that I'd reached out to this organization called Strong Towns.
Did they say anything? What did you get a response back from them?
They're going to give us a concept plan on how they could do this virtually, and what services they would offer. So they're supposed to get back to me in the next day or so.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you could share that with the group, and we can all take a look and then discuss it at future meetings, that would be great. Okay, now it's Dan's turn. Unless anybody had any questions, any other questions about educational sessions. Okay, so Dan, we will open the floor to you for any thoughts about what you've heard tonight, or thoughts from the presentation yesterday, or just, anything you want to add.
Yeah, I don't have too much. I just note your discussion of the term urban and agree, it's kind of a term of art. So it's kind of hard to avoid it a little bit, but certainly for your outward conversations, you could do your best to leave it out, just because it scares people. They think you're talking about, turning Lewisboro urban, and it's not that. But so yeah, and it's exciting that the RFP response date is around the corner. So that's really a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hearing what kind of response we get. And yeah, I think the Strong Towns, of all the kind of, browsing around different organizations that are in the sort of planning and creative thinking business, their sort of approach to things I find very interesting. And they do look at suburbs a lot, and how suburbs got to be the way they are, and what different places have done to sort of address some of the features that have sort of grown out of that without intention. And so it looks interesting if we can get them to come in and sort of give us a little some talks about different subjects. So we'll see.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ed, does anybody have any questions for Dan?
Yeah, but the presentation was great, and it was just, rock solid. Here we are, and so it didn't really, there was nothing controversial or unclear about it. So yeah, there was no particular questions.
Didn't hurt that there are only about 3 people in the audience too.
Yeah.
But I think that is really good feedback. That's what we like to hear.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so next meetings. Next month we're back at 2 meetings. We're gonna have a lot to start working on. November 9th and November 23rd. And if anybody knows right now they have a conflict for either of those, shoot me an email. Yeah, shoot me an email right now, and then if I get, if we have too many people that can't make those dates, we can adjust. I know the plan that doesn't include a planning board Tuesday. And in terms of action items, I'm just bringing up the grid. If anybody has any comments or thoughts about open action items, we're ahead of schedule. So I think we're doing a great job of moving through these as they get on here, they get accomplished most of the time, accomplished, taken off the list. We have a really good team on this committee, and thank you so much to all of you for all of the continued work that you're putting in. Yeah, I'm really proud of us. Okay, I don't think anybody, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. So we'll be back on November 9th, and we will have some email traffic between now and then for sure. Yeah, I'd move to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate your time as